Welcome back, students taking Math for Business and Finance and Math Applications, and we're continuing on with the Chapter 17 drill problems. So we finished on problem 17-12, which was for the declining balance method. And so in this video for 17-13, I guess it's about makers. Remember, pause and replay the video if you don't understand something, and if you still don't get it, then feel free to contact an instructor. Okay. And don't mind my voice. I have a sinus infection, so but you'll live with it. All right. So 17-13 says for the first 2 years, calculate the depreciation expense for a $7,000 car under makers. This is a non-luxury car. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is to find the asset class. And so I've reproduced this slide. So when you come here, read through, each year, and we're looking at automobiles and non-luxury. So that means we're going to use the class recovery period of 5 years. And then from that 5 years, we have to come to our annual recovery table, and we come under the 5-year class, and it tells us since we knew 2 years, so our first year is going to be 20%, and then our second year it's going to be 32%. Okay, so to do this, and I'm just going to freeform this. So year 1, right? We have a $7,000 car, and we had determined that we needed to multiply it by 20%. So our interest expense for the first year is going to be $1,400. Okay. In year 2, we still have the same $7,000. Okay, and notice that I'm not concerning myself with the book value. I'm concerning myself with the cost. It's not taking the 7,000 less the 1,400 and having a book value of that's 5,600. Okay, we're not using a book value of 5,600. We're using the same cost. Okay? And when we use the same cost for the second year, we had a percentage of 32%. So 7,000 times 32% is 2,240. That's depreciation expense for the second year in makers. And again, notice that we're not concerning ourselves with the book value or accumulated depreciation. Okay, we're just taking the percentages and saying that's what it is for year 1, and that's what it is for year 2. If we had gone and did year 3, oops, wrong way, I would have taken 19.2% and multiplied it, okay, in order to get year 3. If that's what I needed, all right, but I don't. But just so you're aware, and whatever amount I get, that's what I would get for year 3, and that's how we just continuously do makers, okay. All right, so and realize that will, using the maker system by following those percentages there, okay, if we go by those percentages, we will get down to a value of 0, okay, because notice on the bottom here it says identifies where we're switching to straight line. Okay, so right here is where we're switching to straight line, and that's what will take us right down to the a book value of 0. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Next problem is complete the following table given this information. So we're dealing with units. Nope. Let's see. Complete the following table given this information. Okay, so this is problems 15 through 18, and this is the information, but we have the 4 different methods all in one table here, and we want to know what the depreciation expense is. for year 1 and year 2. So start out with straight line. Okay, so remember, straight line is our cost less our residual value over the useful life in years. Okay, so we have our cost is 94,000, and we subtract out the residual value of 4,000. That gives us 90,000, and we divide that by our useful life of 5 years, and so that means we're going to depreciate 18,000 a year. And since straight line is the same each and every year, our first year here is going to be 18,000, and our second year is going to be 18,000. Simple enough. Okay, units of production. We are going to do the same exact thing, okay, of having 94,000 less the 4,000, giving us a book value of 90,000. But that stays the same. That calculation stays the same for our straight line depreciation and our units of production. But the difference with the units of production is that what we need to get is a dollar per unit, okay? Because we take a dollar per unit, because we take that dollar per unit and we're going to multiply by however many units for that particular year. So I get this, I do the same value, all right, to get a book value of 90,000, but now I have to divide by the estimated units the machine will produce. And notice that the word says estimate. I mean, they're saying it's 100,000. I could have just as easily made that 110,000 or 120,000. Now, obviously, you're not going to, go and create something that's, ridiculous. Like, I mean, if the machine will wear out over 100,000 units, you're not going to make it 1,000,000, and you're not going to make it 2,000 either. Okay, so you are using a reasonable guesstimate here as to how many units the machine will produce. And generally, let's say it's the first time you're ever using this machine and you don't know, well, there's probably some information out on the internet as to how many units it will produce. You're able to find that information as your first guesstimate. And then, of course, as you go forward, let's say you wear out this piece of equipment, well, you're going to know how many units that it produced. And of course, that's what you can use for your next purchase. So you're always able to find, the number of units the machine, the equipment will produce. But it's an estimate, and it doesn't have to be exact. So in this case here, 90,000 divided by the 100,000 in units means that we're talking about 90 cents per unit. Okay, so let me erase all of this. Okay, so, and I'm just going to quickly rewrite it so it makes it a little bit neater. 94,000. I can't even write it right the first time there. Okay, 94,000 less 4,000 gives us 90,000. Okay, and so we take 90,000 and we divide it by 100,000, and that gives us 0.9, 90 cents per unit. So in year 1, we have 60,000 units that's being produced, and we multiply it by the 90 cents, so the 0.9, and that gives us $54,000 in depreciation expense for the first year. Okay. In the second year, we have 15,000 times the 0.9, okay, and that gives us $13,500 in depreciation expense. Okay, so we have 54,000 here and 13,500 for year 2 for units of production. Okay. Now, declining balance. Let's erase this. Let's see here. For the declining balance, we're going to assume double declining balance here. Even though the text material didn't say that. And again, if you went back to my theory video, the method is called declining balance, but oftentimes we just call it double declining balance to indicate multiplying by 2. And that's the most common one because the reason why you're using the declining balance method is to be able to take, excuse me, I'm sorry, is to be able to take the most amount of depreciation in the first year. So you can use a factor up to 2. Well, if you're trying to take the most, why wouldn't you just use the 2? Okay, so quite often we're using the factor of 2, and that's why we call it a double declining balance. If we use a factor other than 2, we just call the method declining balance, but we have to state it. And in this case here, they're not telling us, so we're just going to make that assumption that we're using the 2 for double declining balance. Okay. All right, so the way we go about it is the useful life is 5 years. Now remember, we have to figure out, for the declining balance, we have to figure out the percentage. So we're using it for 5 years, and we want to know for each year. So it's 1 over 5, which gives us 20%. And since it's double declining, we multiply by 2, which is going to give us a 40% factor. Okay. So now when we do the double declining balance, we take our 94,000 and we're going to multiply it by the 40%. We don't concern ourselves with the residual value or the residual value / salvage value until we get to a point in time where we're actually looking at, we get close to the residual value of 4,000. In other words, we're not subtracting 4,000 here. Okay, after we've depreciated it over so many years, we're going to end up with a book value that's close to the 4,000. And for that next year, we're going to just basically take the difference between the two. All right, so that's where that residual value comes into play. But here, we're only looking at year 1 and year 2. All right, we're not looking at years 3 and 4 when we would have to pay attention to the residual value. So we start out, by taking that book value of 94,000 and multiplying by the 40%, and that gives me $37,600 in year 1. Okay. Now for year 2, we have to pay attention to what our book value is. So we have the 94,000 less the 37,600 for depreciation expense. Okay, and that gives us $56,400. Okay, and now that's the figure we're going to multiply by the 40%, and we get 22,560 as our depreciation for year 2. Okay, so 37,600 and 22,560 for year 2 in the declining balance method. Okay, so just as a quick repeat, because it's a little bit more complicated, we understand how we arrive at the 40% factor. Okay, the number of years, useful years, and since we want to know for 1 year, we take the 1 and come up with a percentage, and we multiply by our factor of 2, and that gave us 40%. But in our first year, we start out with the cost of the machine at 94,000, multiplying it by the 40%, and that gave us the 37,600 as our depreciation expense. Now we need to know what the book value is at the end of year 1 so that we can use that factor for year 2. So it's our 94,000 less the 37,600, okay, which means we have a book value at the end of the year of 56,400. which is what we're going to use for year number 2, and multiply by the 40%. Okay, and that gave us our new depreciation, 22,560. Okay, and of course I'd have to calculate the accumulated depreciation again and subtract it from the cost to go into year 3. But as we move forward from year to year to year, where our residual value will come into effect is when we get close to, when our accumulated depreciation grows to the point where we're close to that residual value of 4, or a book value, just thinking opposite. When we get close to the 4,000, then we just use, fudge the adjustment to whatever amount it is that takes us to the 4,000, but that happens in year 3 or 4, okay? It's not happening for this problem. Right, so now, lastly, makers, and they're telling us it's a 5-year class, okay? So with the makers, and we're looking at a 5-year class, remember, in the 5-year class, whatever the asset is, it would be in this group right here, okay? And we come down to our annual recovery table, and we look for that year class, and then we take whatever percentage it is, for each and every year. So we only want 2 years, so we're going to look at 20% and 32%. Okay, so I take my 94,000 and I'm multiplying it by the 20% in the first year, and that gives me $18,800 as depreciation expense for year 1. Okay. Then we take the 94,000 again, and now we're using the percentage for year 2, which is 32%. Okay, and that gives me 30,800 for year 2. Okay, so 18,800 and 30,080. Sorry about that. That's not 30,800. That's 30,080. See, I can't even do it right twice in a row. Sorry. And so that's 30,080. 80. All right, there we go. Finally. All right, so excuse me. That's the 4 methods in comparison. And remember, with the makers, we're not concerned with that residual value. Okay, that just works its way out. So if you have any questions, and these methods are relatively simple, and it's just a lot of number crunching in order to create the schedules of depreciation. So if you have any questions, feel free to go back over the theory videos or watch and pause, rewind these videos, and watch them again. And if you still have any questions, definitely telephone and speak with an instructor. Okay, so we will see you in the next set of videos for the word problems.